So if you're watching this on Instagram, then you'll notice that I've done a small series of clips where I'm talking about the idea of mysticism, theism, atheism, and this notion of a saturated phenomenon. And the reason why I was putting those clips up is because I'm in the middle of Atheism for Lent, and we were doing the week on mysticism. Next week we go into the more materialist critique of people like Feuerbach and Marx and Joe Hill and others. So I thought I would take some of the ideas that I looked at in those segments and flesh them out a little bit more. This is also a way for me to look forward to what I'm going to be doing after Atheism for Lent when I do a few seminars on this topic of unknowing or uncertainty. So what I'd like to do in this video is look at the phrase "I don't know" and try to bring a little bit of clarity to that term, because I was out recently with some people and somebody was saying how we don't know things. And it was clear that there were a few things going on in that term. So I thought I'd break it down by talking about 4 different ways that we don't know, going from the least interesting to hopefully the most interesting. So stick with the video to get to the best stuff. Okay, so 4 different types of I don't know. I'm going to list them out, and I'm going to mention an affect that is very strongly connected with each of them. And as I say, I'm going to start with the most simple. Now, whenever somebody says, "I don't know," or "we don't know," they can often mean that there is so much stuff that we currently don't understand. That's the most simple notion of "I don't know." So I don't know what's happening outside the door at the moment because I can't see. There might be somebody walking past. I don't know how computer chips work or how a microwave oven operates in any detail or anything like that. So there's lots of things we just don't know because we lack the knowledge. And the affect that's most connected to this is curiosity. So whenever we are faced with something we don't know, we can feel curious and we can look up YouTube videos or we can read a book, we can discuss with an expert. And of course, there's so much that we don't know. But that's one way of describing it, and that's usually what people mean. But there's also other things that they mean. And so the second one, which is a little bit more interesting, is I want to call it the kind of meaningless statements. A type of not knowing that comes from not being able to have any insight into a statement that cannot be verified or falsified. Somebody might make a statement and you take it seriously and you try to think about it. But if that statement can't be verified or falsified, you shouldn't worry about it. It's a statement that you can't get a purchase on, you can't kind of grasp, you can't do anything with. So for example, if someone is going through a psychotic episode and they think that a person is communicating with them in some sort of sly way, either through electronics implanted into their brain, or they're controlling their environment, or whatever it is, so they feel this other is monitoring them. Say it's the FBI, and then you say to them, well, listen, if there's a chip in your brain, we'll be able to pick up some sort of signal. And then the person says, well, no, you won't be able to pick up a signal because it's very, very advanced technology. And then you go, well, we'll do an X-ray and we'll find it. Go, oh, no, it's a nanotechnology. It's so small that an X-ray won't pick it up. And you keep going like this, and you realize that whatever you say, the person just changes the goalposts to make sure that what they're saying can never be verified or falsified. In philosophy, then, they say that's a meaningless statement. Don't worry about it. And that's even worse than something being untrue in philosophy, if something's kind of meaningless. And you see this as well with any kind of fringe ideas. Some fringe ideas do give you criteria for verification and falsification, but if you're ever talking to somebody and it's obvious that everything you say, for example, if someone says, well, I have ESP and I can predict things, and then you go, okay, well, let's set up an experiment, and then they go, well, funnily enough, if in laboratory conditions it won't work, and then you go, well, okay, we'll do it outside of a laboratory, but we'll take notation. Go, oh no, but your presence, the presence of a skeptic, affects my abilities. And what you find is every time you try to create a new criteria to verify or falsify what they're saying, they change the goalposts. eventually you get to the point of going, well, until you can give me a criteria that can allow us to verify or falsify, this is just a meaningless statement. Okay, so those are the two kind of basic ways that people use the term I don't know. Then we enter into two of the more interesting ones. So the next one, which I've mentioned in the previous videos, we can call saturation, which is an I don't know that comes from having an influx of something. So you experience a too muchness that you cannot symbolize and conceptualize. Whether that's like a piece of art, whether it's a sexual experience, whether it's an experience of listening to some music or whatever it is, an experience in which you feel that you're overwhelmed by something that it doesn't allow you to put it into words, you're short-circuited. And I mentioned how Anselm in the Proslogion, he talks about things that can exist in the mind but not in reality. So if you're a musician and you're thinking about an album, the music is in your mind, but it's not in reality. And then you can write the album, and now that exists in the mind and in reality. But then Anselm says it's also possible for something to exist in reality that cannot be contained by the mind. And this is the saturated phenomenon. And then, the affect, I should say, the affect of the second one is frustration. And the affect of this third one is awe. And then finally, we can talk about the I don't know that comes from an experience of the abyss of the other, of the other's desire. The question, what does the other want of me? This is the one that I want to spend a little bit more time pulling apart. There's a very primitive game that children play, and we all continue to play it in various ways in life. And that game was christened the Fort Da game by Freud. And it's a game where a child will throw something away and then bring it back, or the parent will bring it back, right? So maybe the child will push something off a table, and then the parent puts it on the table, they push it off the table, and you can see them getting immense pleasure from this back and forth of presence and absence. Or there's various games of peekaboo, where either the child will hide or you'll hide behind your hands and then you'll kind of reveal yourself. So there's this basic presence and absence game. And a lot of childhood and adulthood is working out how to deal with the presence and the absence of another. So anyway, this very early game that the child plays is really, you could say, the beginning of language. Because language requires two words, two signifiers. You can't have a language with one signifier. A word has to refer to another word. There has to be a slippage, a movement. You can't have a movement with just one word. So like the most basic binary language is the language of presence and absence. And you can see this as a way to understand and gain control of the presence and absence of the mothering one and of the mother's breast, really, the first presence and absence they feel. So instead of being out of control and the breast is sometimes there and it sometimes isn't, this game allows them the fantasy of a type of control. But that's not the most interesting presence and absence that the child has to deal with. The second is the presence of the other's desire. And the presence of the other's desire is also an absence. So in the Fort Da game, there is presence and absence. So that's the first binary kind of language. That's the kind of scientific cause and effect. Now we get into dialectics, because the child also experiences themselves as an object for the other. Right? So a child has to be observed all the time. Right? Most children want to be observed and need to be observed. And it's not just about making sure that they're safe. It's about a child having what R.D. Laing calls ontological insecurity. Their being is under threat. They don't quite know themselves as a subject, as an ego. And that's a very terrifying thing. And if that continues, if ontological insecurity continues, that's kind of schizoid, psychotic structures in adults. So what happens is the child experiences themselves as an object for others. They begin to get object permanence through seeing that they are an object for their siblings, for their parents. And this is sometimes why a children wants the light on. It's not that they're scared that there's something in the dark. They're scared that there's nothing in the dark, that the dark will envelop them. So having the light on means being seen. to being observed. Having a story read to you is something being read to you. And eventually the child begins to at first see themselves as an object. So children often count themselves like, oh, I have two brothers, James and myself, right? My brother's called James. But eventually I subjectivize that. I get ontological security if everything works well. And I see myself as an I, as a subject. But part of this then is you experience the gaze of the other and the desire of the other. And the funny thing about the gaze and the desire of another is that that's an absence, right? You can't grasp desire. We desire the desire of the ones we desire. That's what the most precious material is, the desire of the other. We desire that desire, but desire is a type of lack. Whenever someone desires us, it means that there's something missing, and their desire is alighting on us, and we see it alighting on us because of the gaze. We see the eyes look at us. We see the facial expressions. We hear noises that tell us that we are desired and desirable. Now, there's two things about that, by the way. One is that's great. It's something that offers protection. It gives us a sense of self, but it's also a threat. Too much of the other's desire can feel enveloping, can feel claustrophobic, can feel too much. And in Lacanian psychoanalysis, one of the things the child is attempting to do in many ways is to wean. It's not that we wean the child ultimately wants to wean the mother. They need to differentiate in some way that the over proximity of the other's desire can be too much. So now the child is also navigating a presence and an absence, but the presence and absence are connected. Right? Because the presence of desire is the presence of an absence, of something that is lacking. So it's ghostly. The ghost is the presence of an absence. Something is present that is absent. An experience of the desire of the other in which we never quite know who we are to the other. What do they want from us? What am I to them? And this question can continue into adulthood. What does this person that I am with want of me? What do my parents want of me? What do my brother and sister want of me? And that's an I don't know. But it's an I don't know that doesn't come from an excess of intuition, an excess of experience. It's an I don't know that comes from a type of encounter with a vacuum, a type of counter experience in which you don't have an influx of something, but rather you feel yourself enveloped by a nothing, by a lack, by a question of what does the other want. And the affect that shows this is anxiety. Anxiety is the affect of the experience of the I don't know what the other wants of me, what society wants of me. Now, funnily enough, this experience or counter experience of the other's desire is one that we try to protect ourselves from, obviously, and we protect ourselves from it in all sorts of ways, but we can never quite get rid of it. And this is what causes us desire. This is what kind of follows us. So whenever people say, well, we kind of repeat the relationships of our past, or they say that we'll end up going out with someone like our mother or our father, it's probably truer to say that we will go out with someone who can repeat the type of relationship to the parents' desire that we had when we were young. If I can say it like this, when the child is confronted with this over proximity of the desire of the other, they have to figure out an answer to the question, what does the other want of me? What do they desire? And the answer that the child has to that question is kind of fantasy. That is your phantasmic structure as you get older. The way you answer the question, what does the other want, is what then draws you into adult relationships, where it's a kind of like a repeat of the enigmatic desire of the other and your attempt to understand it and have the right relationship to it. And actually I was talking to someone just 2 days ago about a book called Game, or The Game. I think it's a book that tells people how to go into a bar and get a conversation started. And one of the techniques where a guy would go up to somebody and say something like, oh, I like your dress, but would say it in such a way that the woman doesn't know if they're being sincere or if they're not being sincere, right? So basically what they're doing is they're generating an experience of what does the other want of me? What is their desire? What do they like or not like? And in that space, our desire is evoked, right? We start to go, who am I? What am I to the other? And then we start to fantasize what we are to the other. And then I suppose if the person plays into that fantasy, they're going to kind of be attracted to, the person's going to be attracted to them. So the Das Ding is the name for the abyss of the other's desire, the mother other's desire. So our first experience of, say, our mother or father or our siblings, what do they want of me? That abyss of not knowing the answer is Das Ding. And when it appears in our adult life, that is called objet petit a, is the psychoanalytic term. Small object A, that's kind of the replaying of that question in your adulthood and the replaying of the answer you came to in your childhood reappearing in your adulthood. Okay, so I'll just briefly go over the four again, and in the next video I'm going to connect this with the idea of transcendence. In, as I said, the first one, there's an ignorance, and with that ignorance, at its best, comes the emotion or the affect of curiosity. In the second, there's an encounter with a meaningless statement, and the affect is frustration. In the third, there is an encounter with something that is too much, and the affect is awe. Something Wilfred Bion talks about O, and what he means by the letter O is this experience, mostly in childhood but also in adulthood, this experience of something that is too much, that we cannot conceptualize, and he gives it the algebraic symbol O. And then there is the encounter with the abyss of the other's desire, and the affect is anxiety. But the trick of the last one is that we're asking, what does the other want of me? The truth is they don't know. They don't know their own desire. Their desire has been structured by their relationships and is always trying to figure out what the other desires. So we're all, in a sense, trying to impress the other, be the object of the other's desire if we desire them. So even as a kid and a teenager, you're kind of hanging out with people, trying to impress them, getting into the same things that they are, but they're doing the same thing, right? So we're all kind of like unsure what we desire, and we want to be the object of desire to the other. And this is kind of going on, and there is no one who kind of knows what they want, that hasn't, where their desire has somehow not been given to them through their kind of relationships with the other. And once you realize that, you don't overcome anxiety. You're able to embrace the anxiety and turn it into something powerful and good.